go into the
All right, everybody, welcome to, what are we doing? Public Works and Finance. Today, December 11th. Hard to believe it's December 11th already. Sorry, we were yakking. Now I'm like, first thing on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from October 9th. Any concerns about the minutes?
No concerns.
We were all actually there.
Yeah.
All right, next on the agenda is the disbursement report for November 2023 with Sarah Banks. Oh, you're not Sarah
but
Banks.
not Sarah. Look at that.
Do I need to say my name?
Well, I suppose. I
You're
mean,
probably good
Taylor
to
can
introduce yourself.
probably. No, you don't. Taylor
Renee
Taylor
Tapp.
knows who you are.
So I'm here to talk about the major expenditures for November. Total expenditures were $5,033,168. Of that, the major expenditures were $4,894,912. Payroll was $1,237,498. And then other major expenditures, we had a payment on the booster station project for $963,554. A payment on the South US 95 water sewer project of $469,700. The second and final payment on the new fire engine, $371,951. We paid our workers' comp policy for the year for $183,570. And we had a payment on the Palouse Mall water main replacement project of $162,250. Any questions or anything?
Didn't seem like there was anything unusual or surprising that.
I
Oh.
just wondered a couple of things. We look like we got we got a fire truck, and then we also got a new Ford F-150. Is that for grounds or?
That was a
Parks
storm
and Rec.
department vehicle, so that's the F-150 Lightning. So that's the electric F-150 we've been waiting for
Yeah.
about 18 months, I think, was just delivered and was in the parade last week. So it was pulling one of the floats.
Okay.
So that's for the stormwater department.
About, hybrids and electric. So that is the electric. Cool. And then we got a Chevy for the police department. Sounds like a new police car, a new fire truck, a new electric car.
Santa came early.
Yeah. I'll put my order in. Any other questions about the?
Was the water? Can you remind me again the water main bill? That was unforeseen, correct? Or was that a scheduled?
No scheduled projects. So we had two major water line projects, excuse me, this summer. One was for a asbestos concrete pipe behind the mall. So this one is going to be, this Palouse Mall AC water main replacement was an asbestos concrete water main located behind Winco. That had significant deterioration and wall thinning and was at risk of failure. So that's one's been on our radar, been in the CIP for about 3 years and finally reached construction this year. We also had a transmission main project that was more on the Pullman Highway side, on the south side of the highway. That was a part of programmed improvements to increase transmission from well 10 on the west side, now our highest producing well, to our reservoirs that are primarily located on the east side of town.
Okay. And
So-
the new, the replacement of the pump station that's going to also serve anything that potentially could go to that area too, right? Or is it just for the mall?
So for the booster
Yeah, the
station,
boosters.
the booster station payment, so for the phase
Sorry, not the booster station. Behind Winco.
behind Winco, that is part of our overall distribution. So we do have the big water main located on the Pullman Highway frontage. We also have a main that runs behind the mall and then connects into A Street and then moves to the east from there. Both of those are primarily large distribution projects. These are not pipes that just serve Winco or the mall property.
Yeah.
They're part of larger transportation
okay.
systems. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for explaining that.
All right. Would you guys like to approve the use of digital signatures to sign the disbursement
I
report?
would.
Yes.
All righty. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the Affordable Housing Grant Program update with Cody Riddle.
I really thought this was happening in a different meeting. I don't know what I was reading earlier when I looked at this, so I was just looking at something weird.
Well, thank you. This is, as you'll recall, the city adopted or approved an affordable housing grant program back in fall of 2021. Since then, you've awarded $120,000 in grants or funds for 6 new homes. One of them has been complete to date, with 4 more likely to occur or to be complete this next construction year. The hangup, though, with not seeing more is largely in the original language required them to commit to that affordability in perpetuity, and that's been a struggle with the affordable housing developers and with their lenders and partners. So we've included just 2 minor but hopefully important changes in the grant program. One, that commitment be changed from perpetuity to 50 years, to a term of 50 years. And then the second change, there were 2 kind of formulas for calculating eligibility. It got a little bit cumbersome or confusing for developers, and so we're suggesting a change there. Grants would still be limited to 80% for those earning 80% or lower of the area median income, and that ultimately the cost, principal, utilities, taxes, insurance still could not exceed 35% of a buyer's income. And so with that, again, one of the very few tools the city does have to move the needle in terms of affordable housing. And our hope is that with these minor changes, it does so. So we would ask for your recommendation for approval to the full council.
Cody, wasn't it 70% those earning 70% or less before?
You had to be 80% or lower to be eligible. And then there was kind of a complex calculation. One of them was 70% or lower, but in that one, it didn't cap things at the 35% of their income. So
you just
we simplified it into one hopefully easy to use formula.
Good.
Some of it is estimates around utilities and things like that,
Sure.
where it's new construction often, but.
Cody, just had a question for you quickly on the 35% threshold. So the annual mortgage payment amount, including related expenses, may not exceed 35% of the annual household income. Do we want to, I guess I'm just curious if we feel like we need to identify, so we're saying the buyer has to have a household income that's 80% or less of the AMI. And then we're saying 35% of the annual household income. So are we saying the buyer's household income?
Correct.
Okay, well, I'm wondering if we ought to just add a buyer's to their, so that we're tying that 35% to somebody who's 80% or below.
We could add buyers again to that second
Might
And
just,
cannot exceed 35% of a specific
of the buyer's annual.
That's what it says.
in section
B.
Section B.
Sorry, I was
Uh,
looking at
So
the
it's
summary.
6.b of the attached resolution. B just states the annual mortgage payment. So it says that the buyer's household income, so A is the buyer's household income shall be 80% or less of the Lathrop County AMI. And B, it states the annual mortgage payment amount may not exceed 35% of the annual household income. And we might
Add
want to
buyers.
clarify what annual household income. The buyer's just tying it into that.
Yeah.
So that it's essentially 35% of somebody who is at 80% or less than
Correct.
the annual household income.
Is it normal to include utilities in that calculation
I
about
think-
housing?
For cost burden, typically, if you're looking at that, and 35% is probably, 30 to 35% is the typical number used to determine whether somebody's cost burden. It usually involves all housing expenses.
I just didn't realize utilities was usually included.
And given that it went to 35, I think adding utilities in there makes sense.
Had it been a hang up for some folks or just for our folks or buyers,
I think
this formula, or did someone just recognize and be like, wow, we can make this easier?
some of both. I mean, we
Yeah.
have a limited pool. Honestly, we worked so far with two groups, and it was a challenge for
Okay.
both. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So Moscow Affordable Housing Trust is one of the groups. Who's the other group?
Habitat for Humanity.
Okay.
Good.
And then if these houses aren't complete is it 2 years?
The ones that we've granted so far do expire towards the end of 2024, and we'll want to be mindful of that, and that some of it was a commitment, I guess, of the ARPA funds.
So they need to be obligated by the end of 24 and expended by the end of 26. So we can certainly extend the obligation, but we have to be mindful that if it's not expended by the end of 26, that we potentially, I'm not sure what we do with those funds then, because if they're obligated, not expended, I don't know what the remedy for that would be. So if it's going to be a situation where we're dependent upon somebody else's actions to expend those funds, we just might have to look by the end of 24 to change our method of commitment in some fashion. So we don't end up with a commitment that doesn't get fulfilled because they couldn't find buyers, for whatever reason that precludes the unit construction. If we can't expend it by the end of 26 because they haven't completed it, that put us in a bit of an awkward position. So we'll probably, as we approach towards the latter half of the upcoming year, we'll want to be monitoring the progress on those units and seeing whether we think those are actually going to be expended. And if not, we might look at other ways we can contribute towards affordable housing where we can ensure that that is expended by 26.
That makes sense. That's a good catch.
Which, can you remind me what year this was implemented?
2021, fall of 2021,
Fall 2021?
late fall, early winter.
Okay.
And Cody, are you going to be monitoring that?
Yes.
Okay.
And others, but yes, me certainly.
Because I'm not going to remember in 2026.
We will keep our eyes on.
Now I will. Now I will. No, since I said it, I wake up in the middle of the night. Like, money. All right. Any other questions? Do you recommend this for?
I do. I like making things easier.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you. Next on the
And I
agenda.
think that
Oh, yeah.
This resolution,
Oh,
because it's the ordinance that can't, right?
this can, correct.
Yeah.
Resolutions can. That seems pretty simple.
all right.
Thanks, Cody.
Next on the agenda is the 2024 Whitcomb Emergency Dispatch Agreement.
So as the council is aware, we do contract with Whitcomb and have for nearly 20 years for emergency dispatch services. Our current agreements, so Whitcomb's been working on evaluating different methods of cost allocation, looking at potentially developing a multi-year agreement like we had in the past. We did receive a draft agreement late October. I think I finally got a clean version early November. We do have some questions, concerns we'd like to work through with Whitcomb, so they have agreed to allow us to use the current agreement, just renew it for one more year, so we can work through any of our questions and concerns with that document, and hopefully get into a multi-year contract. We've been kind of doing year to year for the last couple of years as they were working through some evaluation. So this agreement in your packet is essentially virtually the same agreement that we approved or the council approved last year. There are a couple of additions, some clarifications with respect to public records retention and response and provision of public records in response to public records requests. We did have some unique circumstances that occurred during the Koberger case looking for records, and Washington has different public record requirements than Idaho. And so we did just provide a little bit of clarification, just to provide guidance in those situations. And then we added the typical Idaho contract requirements, the no Israel boycott, the anti-China ownership, and the public funds for abortion provisions that we have to include in all contracts. So those were also added to the document. The annual cost,
Sorry, can I interrupt?
Yeah.
What was that third one about abortion
no public funds towards abortion
for Whitcomb?
for anybody we
For
contract
anybody
with.
contractor.
Correct. Yep. Anybody we are paying funds to has to certify that our public funds are not going towards that end.
So if they had an insurance program that provided those services.
We're assuming that if they're signing the contract, they're conforming that they are in compliance with the state's requirement. And Whitcomb has reviewed the contract and does not have any concerns with the language as proposed.
Thank you.
The fee this year actually has gone down a little bit, so it's down just over 26,000. There were some one-time equipment cost as well as some proposed outsourced services that were in the budget last year that are not in WITCOM's budget for 2024. And given the services are allocated based on a percentage basis on the call volume to the different agencies that WITCOM dispatches, when the total budget goes down, our cost went down a little bit. So for this next upcoming year, it'll be $776,874. It was about $803,000 last year. So a slight reduction in costs for the upcoming year. So with that, I'm happy to try to answer any questions you might have on the agreement. As I mentioned, probably expect in the next couple months to see a new one coming through once we've had a chance to review WITCOM's new requested agreements and have that ready to go.
How much time do you think they spend on Freedom of Information Act requests? Do you have any idea?
I don't.
Who
I
would do
don't.
that too as well? Right? Is it just handed out to a random person who has a slow call day? Or,
As far as who's doing it in the operations WITCOM?
yeah,
Oh, I do not know.
because that seems like it could take up a lot of time and they're already really short staffed.
So most of those requests come to our police department
Uh-huh.
that are related to those types of calls. So it's unusual. In this case, they were looking for the 911 recording. But more often than not, public records requests related to activities of the police department generally just go to the police department because it's mostly reports and body cam videos and that type of information. Those we respond to requests. This one just was specifically looking for a recording.
Yeah.
And that does not happen very often.
Good, because I remember that taking a really long time to find.
Yeah.
Great. I just didn't want them overrun with that because they were already short staffed. So
They haven't mentioned that as being an issue. It was just Washington has a different rule of when records can be released when compared to Idaho. It's sooner in Washington than it is in Idaho.
Yeah.
And that was
Okay.
the point of concern. Ultimately in that case, we had the non-dissemination order and that controlled. So it wasn't really an issue, but
great. Thank you.
Questions about this one?
No comments.
Do you want
Is
to do
there
this
actually-
on, can we do this on consent?
Certainly
or we
can.
need to bring it-
Yeah,
no,
it's just
this is-
an
I don't
agreement,
think this is
so-
a hard one or even controversial in any way, shape, or form,
I agree with that.
especially when we're saving money.
Next on the agenda is the Star Touch Wireless Communications Facility Lease Agreement. I assume that's how they say it and not Start Out.
I'm assuming that's StarTouch.
Start out.
So we were approached by StarTouch, who is a microwave communications company. They apparently are engaging to provide microwave communication services to T-Mobile that is already located on the city's Rotary Park water tower. The request is to install 2 additional microwave antennas on the water tank. So it's been reviewed by the water department and engineering to ensure structural stability and appropriate space is available on the water tank. And they have improved the installation. So this is the accompanying lease agreement. There is no ground leased area. It is only to attach 2 12-inch microwave antennas to the water tank and then the cabling down to T-Mobile's existing ground enclosure. So we have prepared a lease agreement. This is a little bit less cost because typically a full cell installation includes about 6 antennas and then a ground lease area. So for this particular one, it'll only be $3,600 per year for just the 2 antenna spaces. That's kind of been our going rate for adding just additional ancillary antennas. That is programmed to increase 3% annually with an initial 5-year term and up to 4 additional renewal terms of that same duration. So with that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions the committee might have.
I don't know if this has to do with it or not, but what was the crane doing out on the water tower about a week ago?
That I have no idea.
Checking anything
On
out
Rotary?
this?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Okay.
I do not know. I can certainly find out, but I know they are eager to, but they are not installing anything. They're hoping
I thought they might be checking things out to make sure it was
That was my
safe.
first
could be. They had some pictures.
size of Moscow. every day.
Yeah, they had some pictures. I assumed they were taken by drone, but they had full pictures around much of the tank. Maybe they were doing reconnaissance. I don't know, but it was up at Rotary. Up
Yeah,
on
the
Orchard.
Rotary.
I even have a picture and I could tell you what day. It's a good picture because it was from my yard.
And it was relatively recent.
Last week
It
or
was like, yeah,
two.
last
Oh,
week.
interesting.
And they had two laborers in a cage and they're floating around. I didn't have anything to do for the last 2 weeks, so I was
Just watching.
they're slowly, basically from they started on the east and worked their way to the west side, but they didn't
Interesting.
sweep around the south side at all.
Interesting. Huh. I could certainly find out. They may have been done.
Blue and yellow truck.
They had imagery, I assumed was collected by drone, but anyhow, the plans are attached to the lease agreement.
It was on November 30th.
Oh. Did not know.
You could see it from your place, though. Huh?
Oh yeah, I'm like, oh, what's going on?
Okay.
Anyway, in terms of
Like to,
that, I think that's
recommend
good.
Approval of
Yeah.
the wireless communication facility lease agreement. Put that on consent.
Yes.
Is there any, I guess, just curious, and yes, on consent, this doesn't have to do with it, but I remember having a lot of these discussions in the last couple of years. How many of those can our things take? I know it varies, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have a definitive answer on how many additional antennas that could be accommodated. All cellular companies generally place in a 3 sector, and they can all kind of slightly rotate their placement around the handrail. I would say, ground area is getting a bit occupied. We did have Ubiquitel vacate their site. So when Sprint T-Mobile merged, T-Mobile's kind of the surviving name, and they negotiated a new lease up there, and Ubiquitel's vacating their space. And so, there may be the opportunity for 1, maybe 2 additional carriers. Both Rotary and the Northwest Reservoir have, I believe, 3 carriers each. And that's getting close to
yeah,
the most. This is just kind of 2 isolated microwave antennas, so a little bit easier to place. But I think at most you're talking 1 or maybe 2 carriers at each location,
Gotcha.
if anybody had any additional interest.
thanks.
All right.
Other questions for me?
Next on the agenda is the benefit consulting agreement.
Oh, yeah.
So we did talk about this, I think, during our health insurance renewal, that we were going to be going back out, issuing a request for statements of qualifications for health benefit consulting services. This helps assist the city in maintaining compliance with benefit employment law, helps us negotiate renewals, does actuarial analysis. And if we wish to take our contract or services out to bid to various carriers, they'd facilitate that process and do the negotiations with the carriers. We've been with Murray Group, and prior to that, they were called Helbling Benefits for in excess of 20 years. And so we wanted to go back out and have the opportunity to look at other potential options. We think we received a total of 7 responses to the request for qualifications. That was narrowed down to 3 finalists. So we had a committee that included Sarah Banks, Finance Director, Bonnie as Human Resource Director, myself, and then we had Rich, who is the chair of the Employee Advisory Committee. And so we reviewed the 7 responses, narrowed it down to 3 to bring into interviews, interviewed the 3, and the committee felt that Gallagher was really the best fit and would provide the best services for us. So they were selected. We have negotiated a contract for those services. It'll include health insurance benefit planning, design, vendor management, administration, day-to-day administrative issues, COBRA administration, actual services, a benefits platform, which is the same one we use today. They license as well as Employee Navigator, as well as other consulting services. The agreement will be approximately $10,000 in savings from what we were currently paying previously. And we're moving our COBRA administration to Peak One. That'll also have some reduction. That's not a huge one, but a slight reduction in the cost of those services. So the plan is to have Gallagher under contract by January 1st to pick at the beginning of the year. Start off with them. So this contract that was included in the packet is a draft because Gallagher's legal department was still reviewing it. We did receive their comments back this morning. Largely, there were very minor changes. A note in the compensation. So the way the agreement is structured is $40,000 per year for all the services that are provided. They do offer voluntary benefit programs if employees wish to engage, and they do earn commissions off of those. So the agreement noted that that's not compensation from us, it's from the vendors they work with. They wanted to add a notation there. They also modified some of the insurance indemnification to match their current coverages that largely exceeded what we had specified. And then they just had a few other minor edits. So nothing that caused us any real concern. So we'll get that final draft of the contract in the packet for the 18th and have this on regular, since you won't have the benefit of reviewing that in advance. But there are 3 components included in here. We have the contract with Gallagher Benefit Services. We also have a broker of record letter notification that we need to provide, as well as approval of Peak One's fee schedule for the COBRA administration, which again is slightly less than what we were paying Murray to perform those services for. So I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have on it.
Were you surprised that it came in lower?
No, I mean, no. I mean, at least we thought there might be the potential opportunity to save a little bit. And that really wasn't the thrust of the effort, but we did think there was potentially that opportunity. In most of the proposals that came in, they were all kind of putting our group size at about that cost, because we did ask for cost information from all the vendors. They all seemed to be right around that same amount. So it seemed like that was what the market saw for a group of our size. So no, I think we're happy to move forward. So
Bill, I just what's the relationship between Gallagher and Peak One? Are these two different?
There's two different entities. Yep. So Peak One generally is an administrator of certain services. So Peak One does our HRA administration, processing, and they'll also be doing now the COBRA administration. So they're just a third party that does those administrative tasks, where Gallagher is the consultant on health benefits, and also assistance they act as liaison between us and our insurance provider. Through the course, they help our employees navigate and negotiate or work through issues of coverage and concerns. But Peak is just a processor for the most part.
Is Gallagher out of Boise, or is it?
It'll be out of the Spokane office. They'll be servicing us. They do have an office in Boise, but they'll be servicing us through Spokane.
No questions on that for me.
All right. Sounds
So we'll
like
bring this on regular
needs to go
agenda.
Mhm.
Yep.
regular.
Yep.
All right. Anything else?
I don't think so. Not for me.
Nothing for me.
Nothing from staff.
Okay.
Oh, I did
Would you like
see
to
that.
adjourn?
I would, that the staff Christmas festivities are still looking for treats. I just saw that come across my computer earlier.
Oh, probably still looking for the
Yes.
dessert?
Yes.
Yes, competition, yes.
So. I know Julia gets competitive.
I get competitive.
And she makes
It's
really good
true.
desserts, so I want to.
Competitive baking.
Watch out.